Maybe I'll look better next time. I'm getting my commissary today some mascara and a brush.
I know I was raped, and you ain't nothing but a bunch of scum.
The day that I pleaded no contest to Marion, there was a big write-up in the front page about the cops doing their movie anyway.
I am sorry that my acts of self-defense ended up in court like this, but I take full responsibility for my actions.
On the phone and told her I was going to confess to clear her.
Get the public to believe that she's a serial killer, and you're going to have to get her convicted in order to get this movie to go.
Okay, there will be an automatic appeal. You have the right to an appeal. Mr. Glazer, is that going to be handled by you?
The myth and the reality. What you've heard about Aileen Wuornos has some elements of truth. She did indeed slay 7 men in Florida. She did work as an adult worker. At the urging of her bi ex-lover, she made a surprising in-depth confession, and during her trial she was legally adopted by a kind woman who claimed to have received guidance from God. She made notable obscene outbursts in a number of courtrooms and is currently on Florida's ending row, where she has received 6 ending sentences, the most of any inmate. These statements are all true. However, it's critical to cut through some of the exaggerations surrounding the Wuornos case right away. She wasn't the first female serial slayer in America. While their victims are mostly family members or friends, women have been committing serial slayings for just as long as men, and they typically opt for poison over alternative methods of disposal. Wuornos used a gun to slay uninvited guests. This was rare but not unique.
The day that I pleaded no contest to Marion, there was a big write-up in the front page about the cops doing their movie anyway.
Okay, there will be an automatic appeal. You have the right to an appeal. Mr. Glazer, is that going to be handled by you?
She knows it's self-defense, and she's not saying anything because she's involved in...
And the media jumped all over it. Wuornos' adultery operations are also absurdly overstated. Her assertion that she had physical relations with 250,000 men, which was generally believed to be true, is absurd. To accomplish this achievement, she would have had to bed 35 different men each day for 20 years. Wuornos lacked the endurance and organizational abilities required for such a record-breaking effort. Aileen Wuornos is still intriguing even after the most spectacular rumors about her were proven false. She is both repulsive and yet pitiful. From the moment she was detained, her aggressiveness all but sealed her fate and made most people who came into contact with her or learned about her case dislike her. Her swagger and assertions that each of her 7 victims attempted to physically attack her are as absurd as her brag that she had serviced 250,000 Johns. Her confession, her friendship with and adoption by Arlene Prowl, and her never-had-a-chance personal past add drama to these elements, and one can't help but be drawn into her story. Early life. On February 29, 1956, Wuornos was given the name Eileen Carol Pittman and was born in Rochester, Michigan. Leo Dale Pittman, the father of Eileen, and Diane Wuornos, her mother, were wed on June 3, 1954, when Diane was only 15 years old. 2 months before Eileen was born, less than 2 years later, Diane filed for divorce. Keith, Eileen's older brother, was born in February 1955. Wuornos never met her father since, at the time of her birth, he was serving time for physically attacking and trying to slay a 7-year-old girl. Leo Pittman, who was regarded as having schizophrenia, was found guilty of physically abusing minors, spent time in and out of jail, and in 1969 he hanged himself there. Diane left her children with their maternal grandparents, Lori and Britta Wuornos, in January 1960 when Eileen was about 4 years old. On March 18, 1960,
Now all I need to do is slide through the rest of these stupid trials with Pasco Dixon.
I sentence you in case number 91-463 to death for the murder of Troy Burris.
On the phone and told her I was going to confess to clear her.
Lori and Britta formally adopted Keith and Eileen. Wuornos started having physical relations in class when he was 11 years old in exchange for food, drugs, and cigarettes. Additionally, she had had physical relations with her own brother. Wuornos asserted that her alcoholic grandfather beat and physically attacked her as a young child. He would allegedly make her take off her clothes before beating her, according to her charges. She was attacked by a friend of her grandfather in 1970 when she was 14 years old, leading to her pregnancy. In a facility for single mothers, Wuornos gave birth to a kid who was later given up for adoption. Wuornos quit school a few months after having her child, just around the time her grandmother passed away from liver failure, and she and her brother subsequently became wards of the court. She was kicked out of the house when she was 15 by her grandfather, and she started living in the nearby woods and supporting herself through adultery. Early criminal career. Wuornos was detained for DUI, disorderly conduct, and slaying a .22 caliber pistol from a moving vehicle on May 27, 1974 in Jefferson County, Colorado. She was then charged with FTA, failure to appear. Wuornos hitchhiked to Florida in 1976, where she met Louis Gratz Fell, the president of the yacht club, who was 69 years old. They got married that year, and the local newspaper's society section published a notice of their union. However, Wuornos frequently got into fights at their neighborhood tavern and eventually got arrested for assault. Fell was also struck by her with his own cane, which prompted him to file for a restraining order against her. Upon her return to Michigan, Wuornos was detained and charged with assault and disturbing the peace for hurling a cue ball at a bartender's head on July 14, 1976 in Antrim County, Michigan. Wuornos received $10,000 from her brother Keith's life insurance when he passed away on July 17 from esophageal cancer. Following just 9 weeks of marriage, Wuornos and Fell decided to dissolve their union on July 21. In an armed robbery of a convenience store on May 20, 1981, Wuornos was captured in Edgewater, Florida, and charged with taking $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes. On 4 May 1982, she received a prison term.
And so I lost a lot of my regulars, and Tyra told me, well, why don't you go out there and do your strangers again like you did from the beginning?
I am sorry that my acts of self-defense ended up in court like this, but I take full responsibility for my actions.
She was released on 30 June 1983. Wuornos was detained on May 1, 1984 for attempting to use a bank in Key West to pass fake checks. She was identified as a suspect in the Pasco County theft of a pistol and ammo on November 30, 1985. Wuornos was detained on January 4 in Miami and charged with grand theft auto, resisting arrest, and obstructing justice after presenting identification under the identity of her aunt. The stolen car had a .38 caliber handgun and a box of ammunition, according to Miami police officials. Volusia County, Florida deputy sheriffs held Wuornos on June 2, 1986 for questioning after learning that she had allegedly pulled a revolver on him in his car and demanded $200. A .22 pistol was located under the passenger seat that Wuornos had occupied, and she was also determined to be carrying extra ammunition. In a homo club in Daytona at this time, Wuornos met Tyria Moore, a hotel maid. Together, they moved in, and Wuornos paid their rent with the money she made from adultery. Wuornos and Moore were held by Daytona Beach police on July 4, 1987 at a pub for interrogation over an incident in which they were charged with violence and assault with a beer bottle. Wuornos accused a Daytona Beach bus driver of assault on March 12, 1988. She stated that after an altercation, he shoved her off the bus. As a witness to the incident, Moore was listed. Slayings. Owner of an electronics store in Clearwater, Florida, Richard Malley, 51 years old, on November 30, 1989. A convicted physical attacker was Wuornos' first victim, whom she claimed to have slayed in self-defense. A deputy sheriff from Volusia County, Florida, discovered Mallory's abandoned car 2 days later. Mallory's body was discovered on December 13 in a rural location some distance away. Despite being slayed multiple times, it was determined that 2 bullets to the left lung were what slayed him. Wuornos would ultimately be found guilty of this crime. Construction worker in Winter Garden, Florida, David Spears, 43. His naked body was discovered on June 1, 1990 in Citrus County, Florida, along Highway 19. 6 holes had been fired at him. Rodeo employee Charles Carskaden, 40, on May 31, 1990. His body was discovered in Florida's Pasco County on June 6, 1990. He had received 9 slays from a small caliber gun. Peter Sims, 65 years old. Sims moved to New Jersey from Jupiter, Florida in June 1990.
Get the public to believe that she's a serial killer, and you're going to have to get her convicted in order to get this movie to go.
I have made peace with my Lord, and I have asked forgiveness.
His automobile was discovered on July 4, 1990, near Orange Springs, Florida. Wuornos' palm print was discovered on the interior door handle, and Moore and Wuornos were spotted getting out of the vehicle. He was never discovered. 50-year-old Florida sausage salesman Troy Burris is from Ocala. His disappearance was reported on July 31, 1990. His body was discovered on August 4, 1990, in a rural area near State Road 19 in Marion County, Florida. He had received 2 slays. Police Reserve Walter Gino Antonio, age 62. In Dixie County, Florida, on November 19, 1990, Antonio's completely naked body was discovered close to a lonely logging road. 4 sleighs had been fired at him. His automobile was discovered in Florida's Brevard County 5 days later. Apprehension and sentencing. Following their collision on July 4, 1990, Wuornos and Moore left Peter Sims' vehicle. Witnesses who saw the woman operating the victims' vehicles gave police their names and descriptions, which prompted a media blitz to find them. Additionally, police recovered fingerprints that matched those found in the victims' cars from pawn shops where they had discovered some of the victims' items. Her fingerprints were recorded, and Wuornos had a criminal justice history in Florida. Wuornos' trial for the slaying of Richard Mallory began on January 14, 1992. In criminal prosecutions, prior wrongdoing is typically not admissible, but because of Florida's Williams Rule, the prosecution was able to present evidence pertaining to her earlier offenses to demonstrate a pattern of criminal behavior. With the assistance of Moore's testimony, Wuornos was found guilty of slaying Richard Mallory on January 27, 1992. Psychiatrists for the defense testified that Wuornos had borderline and antisocial personality disorders and was mentally ill at the time of her sentencing. She received an ending sentence 4 days later.
Maybe I'll look better next time. I'm getting my commissary today some mascara and a brush.
I know I was raped, and you ain't nothing but a bunch of scum.
Wuornos entered a not guilty plea to the slayings of Dick Humphreys, Troy Burris, and David Spears on March 31, 1992, claiming she wanted to get right with God. "I wanted to confess to you that Richard Mallory did violently attack me, as I've told you, but these others did not," she said in her statement to the court. "They just started to, really." Wuornos received 3 additional ending sentences on May 15, 1992. Wuornos was once again given the ending penalty after pleading guilty to the slaying of Walter Gino Antonio in February 1993. She was not charged with Peter Sims' slaying because his body was never discovered. She was given 6 ending sentences in total. Wuornos narrated a number of contradictory tales regarding the slayings. She initially asserted that all 7 males had physically assaulted her while she was performing as an adult worker, but later changed her story to reflect that she had acted in self-defense. She told filmmaker Nick Broomfield that it was self-defense, but that she could not abide being on Ending Row, where she had been for 12 years at that point, and that she wanted to die during an interview when she believed the cameras were off. Ending. In 1996, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected Wuornos' appeal. She declared in 2001 that she would stop filing appeals against her ending sentence. "I slayed those men, robbed them as cold as ice," she claimed in her plea to the Florida Supreme Court, asking for the authority to terminate her attorney and end any appeals. "And I do it once more, because I would slay again. There is no possibility of keeping me alive or anything else. Hatred is slithering through my body. I'm so tired of hearing that she is crazy. I've undergone so many evaluations. I'm capable, rational, and I'm attempting to be honest. I'm one of those people that despises human life and would slay once more." She was in the wrong state, according to the defense attorney, for them to comply with the request.
Just shot in self-defense, boom, boom, boom. You know, they weren't cut up, they weren't sliced up, no OJ jazz, you know. Because I was no professional serial killer or anything, murderer or whatever you want to call it, you know.
Killed those men in cold blood.
Yeah, and I got to come clean that I killed those 7 men. I guess not. All they were was shot and left.
Jeb Bush, the governor of Florida, gave 3 psychiatrists a 15-minute interview with Wuornos. The psychiatrists must be persuaded that the condemned person is aware of her impending end and the crimes for which she is being terminated in order to pass the competence test. She was deemed mentally fit for execution by all 3. Later, Wuornos began accusing the prison matronesses of mistreating her. She said that they had contaminated her food, spat on it, served her potatoes that had been boiled in mud, and delivered her meals with pee. She also stated that she overheard discussions about trying to get me so pushed over the brink by them I'd wind up committing self-hurt before the ending and wishing to physically attack me before ending. Additionally, she bemoaned being subjected to strip searches, having her wrists bruised every time she left her cell due to the handcuffs, door kicking, routine window checks by matron, low water pressure, mildew on her mattress, and catcalling in distaste and a pure hatred towards me. When particular officers were on duty, Wuornos threatened to stop using showers and meal trays. "My stomach is growling, and I'm taking showers in my cell's sink in the meanwhile." According to her lawyer, Miss Wuornos only wants to be treated properly and humanely until the day she is put to end. If the claims are untrue, she is obviously crazy. She is confident in her writing. She had a number of interviews with Broomfield throughout the last phases of the appeal process. She claimed that sonic pressure was controlling her mind in her last interview, conducted just before she was put to end, causing her to appear insane.
Okay, I cannot go in the execution chamber and die in the execution chamber as a liar.
Psychologists sketch a portrait of a damaged person with a lurid history of abuse that began in childhood.
You know, I was just wondering how you're going to be, at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Are you prepared?
I'm prepared. If it was a horrendous crime, why didn't I shoot them between the eyes, cut their stick it in their mouth, do all kinds of gross stuff.
She also said that angels were transporting her to heaven on a spaceship as she approached demise. "You ruined my ass, society, the police, and the system," Wuornos said to Broomfield. An attacked woman was ended and utilized in books, movies, and other crap. She ended the interview by saying, "Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass." Later, Broomfield ran into Wuornos' childhood friend, Don Botkins, who said to him, "She's sorry, Nick. She didn't point the finger at you. She first pointed her finger at the press before pointing it at the lawyers. She simply made the decision not to speak further because she understood that doing so might affect how she ended the next day." Last meal. On October 9, 2002, Wuornos was led into the ending room. She was given a $20 budget and informed that her last meal had been KFC and coffee. "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus," she said seconds before she was put to end. Like in the movie June 6. I'll be back, big mothership and everything." Aileen Wuornos passed away at 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time. She was the second woman to be slayed in Florida and the 11th woman to be put to end in the U.S. since the Supreme Court overturned the ban on the ending penalty in 1976. Wuornos herself appeared to be at ease with her impending end. In fact, she seemed to be excited to depart the world of the living.
And I cannot go in the execution chamber and be executed under the devil.
Let them know that I know that the cops knew who I was after Richard Mallory died.
I have to come clean and cleanse my spirit in the name of Jesus Christ.
I wasn't professional at what I was doing.
Eileen,
I did some sloppy work, and I left.
How have you prepared yourself for tomorrow morning?
In his notes, a prison guard who interacted with Wuornos while on Ending Row wrote, "Wuornos is very angry at the media and corrupt institutions, and says she can't wait until Wednesday at 9:30 so she can be with her God and punish all the evildoers for the way they treated her." Wuornos was 46 years old when she died. After demise, Wuornos was executed and her body was burned. Don Botkins, a childhood friend, transported her remains to her native Michigan, where they were scattered beneath a tree. She asked that Carnival by Natalie Merchant be played during her funeral. When questioned why her song was played during the documentary Eileen, Life and End of a Serial Slayer's credits, Natalie Merchant responded as follows, "I couldn't even see the film when director Nick Broomfield sent me a working edit since the subject matter offended me so much. Aileen Wuornos lived a life that would make my greatest nightmares pale in comparison. I didn't agree to the song's use until I learned that Eileen asked Carnival be played at her burial and spent a lot of time listening to my album Tiger Lily when she was on Ending Row. It's strange to consider where my music might end up after it leaves my hands. I have to express my gratitude if it brought her some comfort." In a later statement, Broomfield said, "I think this anger developed inside her. She was also engaged in adultery. I believe she encountered a lot of terrible people on the roadways, and I believe that she simply let her wrath out of her body and ultimately detonated into shocking brutality. That was how she managed to live. Eileen may have genuinely thought she was acting in self-defense.
The lies that went on through my mouth, now prosecutors and cops.
And that you killed the 7 men.
And let me kill the rest of those guys to turn me into a serial killer. I know they did.
As they said, they had it right. A serial killer. Not so much like thrill kill. I was into the robbing biz.
And he said I did the most horrendous crime in the whole wide world.
I believe that a person who is severely psychotic is unable to distinguish between a situation that poses a serious threat to their life and a trivial disagreement, such as when you might say something that she didn't agree with. She would lose her cool and erupt in a black rage about it, and that, in my opinion, is what had brought about these events. When she wasn't in those severe moods, though, she also had a remarkable humanity. psychopathology model. Some experts argue that Wuornos's crimes were motivated by her psychopathology and her tragic past. Wuornos achieved a psychopathy cutoff score of 30, with a score of 32 out of 40 on the psychopathy checklist. Wuornos was also known to meet the necessary standards for identifying antisocial and borderline personality disorders. The majority of Wuornos's childhood physical abuse and career in physical relation work are said to have left her permanently scarred, and it is possible that traumatizing events throughout most of her early life, such as the separation from her biological mother and her grandmother's disregard for the abuse Wuornos suffered from her grandfather, contributed to the lack of a mother-daughter bond for Wuornos as a young child.
Abandoned by her teenage mother when she was just 6 months old, Lee was raised by her alcoholic grandmother.
I mean, you know, serial killers are in this thrill killing jazz. I was into the robbing.
And a cruel grandfather who regularly beat her with his belt buckle. Lee, it sounds like you've been betrayed by everyone.
That's right.
The connection between Wuornos and her adoptive parents was then made worse by the fact that Wuornos and her brother both thought their grandparents were their biological parents until they discovered otherwise at the age of 11. Additionally, Wuornos was reported to have had early behavioral issues such as an explosive temper that hindered her capacity to make friends and made it more and more difficult for her to sustain connections. The development of her borderline personality disorder has been largely attributed to her horrific upbringing, which included physical abuse. The structuralization of the mind at different developmental stages can also be disrupted by such intense trauma, which can lead to primitive, dissociative, and splitting defenses to ward off the intensity of emotional and physical stimulation that cannot be integrated as a child. Wuornos is briefly mentioned by FBI profiler Robert K. Ressler in his autobiographical account of his 20 years working for the agency. He claimed in a 1992 article that he frequently avoids talking about female serial slayers since they usually go on slaying sprees rather than slaying one victim at a time. Wuornos was the lone exception, he said. Ressler, who is credited with coining the term serial slayer to characterize slayers acting for personal enjoyment, does not use it to refer to women slaying in postpartum psychosis or to any slayer acting only for money, such as women who have slain a number of roommates or spouses. Legacy: books. Wuornos was only briefly referenced by FBI profiler Robert K. Ressler in his autobiographical biography of his 20 years with the agency. He claimed in a 1992 article that he frequently avoids talking about female serial slayers since they usually go on slaying sprees rather than slaying one victim at a time. Wuornos was the lone exception, he said. Ressler, who developed the term serial slayer to characterize slayers acting for personal enjoyment, does not use it to describe women slaying in postpartum psychosis or to describe any slayer acting only for money.
But I'm coming clean before I go in that execution chamber and be executed.
That's why I don't care if I'm executed and leave this planet.
Just and eliminate a witness. But still, then again, I got a number, so it's serial killer.
Such as women who have slain a string of roommates or spouses. Lethal Intent is a book about Wuornos that was written about by journalist Sue Russell in 2002. Music. On June 22, 2001, the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco, California, hosted the world premiere of an operatic version of Wuornos's life. The opera, titled Wuornos, was created by Carla Lucero, a composer and librettist. Mary Chun served as conductor, while the John Sims Center for the Performing Arts served as a production company. Jewel, the New York metalcore group It Dies Today, and Pablo Hasél are just a few musicians that have penned songs about Wuornos. From her performance album Malediction and Prayer, singer Diamanda Gallas covered the Phil Ochs song Iron Lady live. She frequently performed it as a tribute to Wuornos. On their studio album The Second Coming from 2004, the Japanese doom metal group Church of Misery included the song Filth Bitch Boogie Eileen Wuornos. Both Lingua Ignota's 2017 album All Bitches Die and Dragged into Sunlight's 2009 album Hatred for Mankind prominently incorporates samples of interviews with Wuornos at the opening of the tracks For I Am the Light and Mine is the Only Way and Holy is the Name of My Ruthless Axe. Wuornos is also mentioned in the song If the Poison Won't Take You, My Dogs Will by Lingua Ignota from her 2018 album Caligula. Superheaven's Poor Eileen, the last song on their 2015 album Ours is Chrome, is a tribute to Eileen Wuornos. On William Belly's third album, Eileen, a parody cover of Dolly Parton's Jolene, donated by Wuornos, is included. On November 1, 2018, Gigi Gorgeous, who played Wuornos, appeared in the music video. For her single Press in 2019, artist Cardi B replicated the infamous mugshot of Wuornos. Rapper Sadistic put the Serial Slayer song Eileen Wuornos on his Delirium EP in 2020. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.